Hello, I'm Leta Mach, and in this interview series for Co-op Month, which is October, we're exploring the world of cooperatives. And today we're going to be talking about one of our most important cooperatives, the one that really, I think, holds the city together and lets us all know what's going on. That's the Greenbelt Cooperative Publishing Company, or Greenbelt Association, the Greenbelt News Review as it's commonly known. And today with us to tell us more about the Greenbelt News Review is Mary Lou Williamson, the editor. And Mary Lou, tell us, how did you get involved with the news review?
Oh, well, that's a good story. I had just gotten married. I was very slow about putting curtains in the window. And one evening after dinner, there was a knock on the door, and a neighbor came up and she said, "I could see through your window that you have a lot of books." And we had a whole wall of, bookshelf, floor to ceiling. She said, "I teach English at the University of Maryland, and I need a copy of Robert Frost's poem, Good Fences Make Good Neighbors. And anybody who's got that many books has got to have what I need. And then I don't have to go to the library and find it. I need it for my class in the morning." And sure enough, we had it. Well, that was Virginia Beecham, who was editor of the Greenbelt News Review, asked me, a little bit about me, found out that I was a history major, and she said, "Oh, well, we're writing the 25-year history of Greenbelt. Maybe you'd like to participate." So I did that, and I started proofreading on Wednesday nights at Virginia's house, because all I had to do was walk down the hill, and I was there. So I became a frequent proofreader. And it was one of my great failures in life. I was assigned to go and interview the city clerk, Winfield McCamey, who met me at the door. Wasn't the least bit interested in who I was or what I thought I wanted to do, and that was the interview.
Well,
I didn't do anything. I didn't even get in the house.
So the story ever get written about when?
Not by me. What I did pick up on were some small histories of some of the churches in town. So that was kind of my introduction.
I think that just snowballed into something much, much bigger. Is that not true?
Well, let's see. That was 1962. By probably the next year, there was a Greenbelt Homes board meeting that Al Skolnick knew was going to be feisty because they were talking about charging rent for the news review. So he wanted somebody else that certain members of the board didn't already hate because they didn't know me. So they sent me. And not only was that my introduction to covering, important meetings, board meetings, council meetings, whatever, around town, it was also my introduction to Matt Amberg, who talked and talked and talked and talked to me after the meeting. But he was very helpful because he was telling me kind of who the players were and what was going on and what was behind charging the news review rent. We didn't pay rent for our space in the basement of one of the Parkway apartments that GHI owned. So we paid what we considered out-of-pocket expenses. In that way, they couldn't raise the rent and drive us out. But 1965, I wrote one of the two stories that ended up in the Supreme Court case.
Well, that was something.
So I had already moved on to doing city council meetings occasionally.
That was something that I did want to get really in depth. I know that we've talked about this before, and it's been in the history books. It helped preserve freedom of the press. And it's an interesting story, so I'll let you tell it.
It is a good story. There was a developer in town who is actually the trustee for a trust, but he was the face of the owners. And they owned property in the north end of town And they wanted to build garden apartments, and Greenbelt wasn't interested in any more garden apartments. Spring Hill Lake was well on the way. We had enough. And he also owned the property near the lake that Greenbelt at the time and the school board was considering for a two-school location. And he said, if you support my efforts at the garden apartment rezoning, then I could make this other property available to you at a reasonable price. And one of our feisty Greenbelt women said, that's blackmail. And of course we published it. So interesting, what he challenged us on was the crime of blackmail, which is not the sense in which we had used that word. We used it in the sense of, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. That's not, the legal crime of blackmail, which is, I will expose you if you don't pay me money or do something I want you to do. And the judges all along said, well, that's up to the jury to decide how you meant the term of blackmail. So we lost at the county court, where our very erudite young lawyer was not liked by the local population serving on the jury. And the down-home lawyer representing the complainant, Charles Bressler, seemed to appeal to, the common man sitting on the jury. And it wasn't until we got to the Supreme Court that the tables were turned, because there the young attorney could talk the language of the Supreme Court, could answer their questions in an appropriate way. And the other man just kind of fell flat. In between, we had lost at the Maryland Supreme Court, it's not called that, Court of Appeals. And they had a unanimous decision against the News Review, using old kind of rules of libel that were no longer really in use, but without somebody to tell them that they needed to change what they were doing, which the Supreme Court did. They were behind the times, but the Supreme Court said that the News Review was performing its wholly legitimate function as a community newspaper, and anyone who read the stories could see that. And we had a unanimous decision in our favor. And the little story I like to tell, because I was there in the Supreme Court.
That must have been an exciting day.
Oh my God, it's just overwhelming to be in such a wonderful place, gorgeous surroundings, very smart, elegant kind of place. And Justice Douglas leaned back in his big chair and went to sleep. And I thought, damn it, he should be listening to this. How can he do that? That's outrageous.
Right.
And what I didn't know, his vote was already assured. He thought there was no reason why anybody should charge a newspaper with libel. I thought it was ridiculous, and he didn't need to listen.
so he took a nap.
But I didn't know that.
You didn't know that. Well, yeah.
Another little story I like to tell, the lawyer that we had, the Washington Post basically provided for us. They told their law firm, not in-house lawyers, but the law firm that would represent them if they were sued, to take our case. Al Skolnick had gone down to talk with the Post and asked them for help, and they said, in a second, in a flash.
It was very important to them.
Sure. I'll digress briefly. The young man was Roger Clark, who handled our case, and it made his name. And do you know what the next court case was that he did?
No, what?
The Pentagon Papers.
Oh my gosh, yes, so.
He was outstanding, and when it really counted in front of the Supreme Court, he was there. But one of the things we did have to do was pay for, we never paid him anything, but we did have to pay for his secretaries who had to get overtime because they were coming in after work to do work for us, and some supplies and some court costs and whatnot. So Elaine Skolnick had divided up all of Greenbelt, and we each had a certain number of courts, a certain area that we would go door to door soliciting money to help us pay for the costs of the case. And so I did my bit, and almost without fail, everybody, every household said yes, they would give me $1. Mm-hmm. Occasionally $2, almost never $5, and never anything more than that. But they all stopped me to say, do you remember the time that you printed my name wrong? Almost everybody had some niggling little memory of something we didn't do right that made them mad, but still, they gave us money.
Yeah, they'd still give you money, even though you just printed their name wrong.
Yeah,
yes.
Not in the right chronological order, but I also was at the meeting the couple of nights after we lost the case at the county level, and we had to decide whether we were going to appeal the decision. And I would guess we had maybe 100 people that came to the meeting, the Freedom of the Press Committee meeting, and mostly they were husband and wife. Mm-hmm. And the judgment against us was $17,500. And somebody tore up sheets of white paper and passed them out. And that night, the people there pledged $14,500. Wow. And you go back to, people gave me $1, maybe mm-hmm. $2, and people didn't have that kind of money, but this was an important issue, and people put down their money. And we kept it in an escrow account. It's Twin Pines Savings and Loan. And everybody got their money back plus interest when the case was completed.
And it just seems that when you're reporting what someone says, how can that be considered wrong? You know, you're just quoting someone.
We now have libel insurance, but how much good that might do, we just are very careful not to get into situations that we think might be difficult.
And I know that you're very careful if you get letters to the editor, you're not going to print them if you don't have the person's name on, and that makes perfect sense. If someone wants to speak out and raise an issue and talk about something, they ought to be able to tell you what their name is.
And occasionally somebody will have a legitimate reason for not wanting their name published, but we have pretty strict guidelines that if they're just mildly uncomfortable, we're not going to accept that mm-hmm. request. They have to have a solid reason that they don't want to publish their name.
Now, the News Review is actually one of our oldest cooperatives. I know you like to think that you're the oldest one, but the credit union claims that. The credit union being formed in October 1937 when people moved to town, and you were in November, the News Review.
The story is that 6 weeks after the first people moved into Greenbelt, they formed a journalistic club. Now, were they able to put out a 16-page newspaper in a week?
Uh-huh.
But it's still, I think it pushes us probably into November. You know what? I'm old enough that I don't care. Whoever's first, whoever wants to be first is okay with me.
I think what's more important is that you have the News Review has been here since pretty much the founding of the town. And your claim, and it's true, is you've never missed an issue. Isn't that the case?
That's right.
So how often do you publish?
Well, we're a weekly paper. The first few years, and I don't even remember the details, the paper was mimeographed, and that was a huge chore.
Oh, yes.
And then we went to some kind of press, and we were published by the Prince George's Post, and the pressman was Herbert Allen. And we stayed, and after the war, he was able to set up his own print shop, and so we moved from the Prince George's Post to Allen Printing and stayed there probably way longer than we should have, because other newspapers had gone to electronic processes, and we were still, all of our ads and a lot of some of the larger type were still wooden type that was hand set. Oh. And Mrs. Allen, Herbert Allen's wife, was chief linotype person, and we went down to proofread the paper Thursday mornings, and sometimes you would notice that Mrs. Allen went in her chair and you wondered where she was, but if you looked behind the big linotype machine, she was standing. She was not a tall woman. She was standing on a crate fixing something in the back of the linotype machine. Every headline was a different font.
And you used to,
I resisted changing. I loved the kind of weird and eclectic look of the newspaper, and I thought to have everything smooth and organized and looking the same would be boring. And I think that's why I think we were way slower to make that kind of change than we should have been, because I like the look of the newspaper now. It's much smarter, much more comfortable to look at, I think.
How is it produced now?
Everything is electronic. The person who puts our paper together lives in Brookville. Okay. And we don't see her. Huh. So everything gets transmitted back and forth and to the print shop, from her computer to the print shop electronically. And we were very hesitant to do that, but it didn't seem to be a choice. And so things have worked out really well. But what we need is going to be a whole lot more electronic work, in that people tell us we need to have an interactive website where people could contribute things, and people could post pictures, a number of different kinds of things that we can't do today. And people want to be able to identify an article in the news review and send it to their friend or their mother or somebody. And today, the way it's done, you can't do that. So this is the grant that we just got this year from the Greenbelt Foundation, is to get a committee together to devise a means of making what I call some baby steps toward having some kind of interactive website. But what I'm telling everybody is it's not going to be me that's going to be doing it. If you want to do that, we need a whole new group of people that are about half my age that know how to do all these things.
You need a 5-year-old, right?
Yeah, right. I need my grandson. So, but right now, we have Kathy Mitri, who's kind of going to be the center of that group. Since Merritt Moore has left town, she was the kind of the pusher for moving forward, and she's left it in Kathy's very capable hands. But right now, Kathy is running the computer for the news review, checking email, typing the corrections, setting up stories for us to copy edit. She's spending hugely long days on Tuesday, coming in at 2 in the afternoon, sometimes earlier. And last night, I think I left the office at 2:15.
In the evening, right?
Yeah. She is objecting strenuously and looking for ways that we can redo some things and figure out how to make it less strenuous.
Yeah, and the staff is essentially the members of the cooperative, and we like to think that it's a worker co-op, but in a traditional worker co-op, you often would have enough income to support yourself. I don't think that's the case with the news review. It's pretty much you get a little stipend.
It's hand to mouth. Because I think we know that community newspapers are, for the most part, not suffering the way the big city newspapers are, because you can't get your local news any other way.
That's true.
However, I think the big, and our amount of advertising we get is dropping. And I think what it is the real estate business. That used to be one of our biggest chunks of income, is that we would have 2 or 3 fairly healthy ads every week from the different real estate companies. And for the most part, we don't have that any longer. And I think it's because their stuff's on the internet.
Okay.
They don't need us. They think people are going straight to the source. They don't need an interloper. So Leonard Wallace is the only one who's really stuck with us. And Jeannie Smith, she's ramped up what the Cantwell Group is doing. And so a fairly substantial ad there. But yeah, now what's new that we haven't had before is a half-page ad from the Doctor's Hospital.
And that's nice.
They have rediscovered us.
Well, that's quite
They used to give us occasional large ads years ago, and then for some reason they stopped. But this is a new woman who's in charge of public relations and learned about the news review and asked us about it, asked about prices, and has guaranteed to give us a half-page ad for a year.
Really?
And that's phenomenal.
That's very nice.
Right. So the city is probably our second best, biggest volume of advertiser. By the way, we had a nibble from, we're wondering who, maybe a city clerk, somebody from College Park. They're so envious of the news review. They were trying to figure out, is that something they could do, and sent us a long list of questions. And first among them was, does the city sponsor your newspaper? Do they, financially support it? And I said, well, yes and no. They do not do more than what they need to do each week in advertising their business, what they need the public to know. So that's sometimes a full page and sometimes it's not. But that's what they do, and they're getting value for what they're doing. They're not just subsidizing the newspaper.
Yeah, it's I guess the newspaper of record, because the government would have to have somewhere to publish things in the record. And I understand that there are many municipalities around the state that are very worried they don't have a small little paper that they can use for their, their paper of record. So they can't find it sort of a reasonably priced way to publish the things that they have to do because they're the city government. So the news review does then provide a really big benefit to the
I think so.
city.
I think so. And the fact that we don't accept canned stories about general interest subjects, things in the news review have to relate to Greenbelt. And the only exception we use for filler are family type activities that are going on kind of in the general area that people might be interested in, and the purpose is to fill a hole.
And I guess you know what you're really looking for now, and you sort of talked about it already, is you need people on this committee to move the news review forward into the 21st century. I'm sure you need just regular reporters and proofreaders and all of that. Is that what you're looking
Yes.
for? And
yes.
how would people get in touch with you if they were and very civic-minded, and if they wanted to learn a new skill? Because this is just a wonderful opportunity to learn to write, to learn to proofread, to find out what's going on in your community. How do they do that?
And we do, you know, take on anybody who is interested. You don't have to be skilled at something. We'll show you what we need for you to be able to do. Proofreading is an easy way in. That's about an hour of your time on Wednesday nights. And you can call the newspaper office. You can call me. My home phone number is listed in the paper in the staff box every week. And the reason is because the office is only open Monday and Tuesday afternoons from 2 to 5. So businesses get irked because they'll call on Wednesday morning or Thursday afternoon and nobody calls them back until the next week. Or there's an email address, newsreview@verizon.net, although we're talking to some other possible cable providers or something, but we haven't made any changes, so I don't know where that's going to go. I'm not in favor of changing because we tried being open on Monday night to kind of spread the Tuesday night work. Did anybody ever show up on Monday night? No. Because they have it in mind that we're open Tuesday night.
Right.
Don't change anything. You don't have to.
So you learn a lot of things when you sign on to the News Review. And again, we hope people will come out and help out the News Review. And thank you for telling us about this.
We sure need it. We
Yeah.
sure need it.